Today is about this brilliant play that I had the privilege of being part of way back in 1974, 51 years ago, when I was nearly 18. And I played Romeo, and I want to encourage students to really understand and immerse themselves in this play. It is one of the best plays that you could ever have. It's still incredibly relatable. If you take the characters, they all resonate with today. They're not distanced from the type of people we are. For instance, Romeo, the role that I had to play, was a young lad of about 17, like many others, aspirations, his mind wandering around, looking at the fairer sex, wanting to meet up with the girl of his dreams and believing that he was falling in love with somebody. And, you know, how many times have young people been in that situation? And you've got Romeo being a bit of a somebody who was wrapped up in his own world for some time. And as he progresses through the play, he has to kind of change and become much more resolved. And he was an intelligent person too. He wasn't somebody who wasn't well read. And these are things that we don't really understand. He was educated. So then we know that the next key character is Juliet. Now, Juliet comes from another wealthy family. These middle-class families or upper-class families were very much self-centered, looking at their status and resonating there. And Juliet is the new generation, and this whole play is about the generation difference and how the older generation created the issues that occurred that were tragic in the end. But Juliet was the type of girl who had her own mind. And throughout the play, she has her own mind, and she ends up confronting her own family. Her mother, Lady Capulet, as she is referred, was a child bride, basically, an arranged marriage. And so we touch that area of tradition that goes on and still goes on today. So it's about all these elements moving further on, but it's also about almost like the development of rivals for power. And the Montagues and the Capulets were rivals. They wanted to better each other. They were no better, they were no less than each other. But it's the Capulets that were at the forefront of the play much more. And then you look at the other elements of the Capulets and the Montagues, and then you look at the friends of Romeo. Romeo had friends. He had friends. A typical friend was Mercutio. Mercutio was the typical alpha male that would not resist a challenge. If challenged, he would be the one who would fight and not be the one who would take flight. Whereas Romeo was more of the peace lover, had his mind on other things. But Mercutio was also a bit of a lad. He wanted to enjoy life, and he did enjoy life. But he tragically doesn't meet his end well. He then go further on. We've got Benvolio. Now, Benvolio is like somebody who looks at Romeo as a role model, kind of looks up to him and wants to be with him and be, you know, part of him. And he's always trying to get involved and help the situation. He doesn't want to get involved in these aggressive, violent acts. And then you get the adversary of Romeo, but not really that Romeo saw him as an adversary. Romeo ended up actually being related to his adversary. So Tybalt was one of those people that we've come across. They're the bully, the people that only take and don't give. And Tybalt is definitely that. And if you think about it, if you're a student, you name one friend of Tybalt, and you won't find one. They weren't friends, they were followers, but they were followers by default. It was like Tybalt was leading them, but then in a sense, he was on his own. And this clash of personalities and jealousies and whatever comes to a head. And Romeo has to face his destiny when he ends up having to fight for his own life against Tybalt, but succeeding in killing him. And then we move on and we look at all the other themes that happen, where we've got the intervention of the people in the middle, like the nurse who looks after Juliet, and Juliet sees the nurse more as a mother figure rather than her own mother, who she finds difficult to understand. We know that when Lady Capulet says, could you love Paris? And she, doesn't want to even go there. She wants to be in love with somebody that she really wants to be in love with. So there's already those clashes. And of course, Lord Capulet wants Juliet to stand in line. So we've got these massive elements of opinion going on between two families, not unlike today, and clashing of different types of families, and it still happens today. And of course, then you've got people like the friar, who was actually a good man and wanted to merge both of the families together. And all of these things should have worked out. If, for instance, Romeo and Juliet had a mobile phone, there would not have been a problem with the idea of Juliet pretending to be dead when Romeo actually thinks she is dead and takes his own life, and then it's too late and she takes her life. So the whole tragic element of this play is about immersing yourself in it, and the relatability is there. So don't be put off by Shakespeare. Shakespeare was incredibly current with whatever he did. He picked on controversial subjects. When we think about the age of Juliet, the actual age that she died was 13. She was nearly 14. She wasn't 14, she was 13. And Romeo was roughly 17, 18. So there were things that we look at history. We can't judge history. That was the history. It's not what we would believe in today, but there's still elements of that kind of control, that element of things that we need to get right in our society. And always putting yourselves first creates big problems. And it becomes a tragic play where nobody really wins. And this is the case when you have massive conflicts and massive problems in the world. It's usually not the majority of people that cause the problems. It's usually one or two. And this again comes up big time in Romeo and Juliet. So look, I know this play back to front. I've played it. It was difficult. It had its moments of sheer, really quite worrying when you're only 17/18 and you're having to go into a relationship with a young girl, Juliet, who was actually not 13 or 14, she's similar age to me, but pretending to be that, and being able to create those moments that were very, very intimate and very difficult was something challenging. But again, it's about growing up, and it's about teenagers, and it's about what happens to the new generation. It's it's all of these things. It's very, very important to know what it is. So it's all very, very important. It's all very, very important. So my advice is this. On this particular YouTube video, there are links to my revision guide for Romeo and Juliet, aka GCSE English language, and the link will take you directly to the shop. There are also other resources that I've built and developed over the years that are very, very appropriate to all of the students who are studying GCSE English. To really understand Shakespeare, you have to be immersed in it. You have to get past the language barriers, because when you see a play or you see a film of it, you understand what is going on. Remember that body language is like a massive element of the way we communicate. It's over 53%. And you've got other areas like sort of words, which are actually about 7% of communication. So it's the way these actors use their body language and the way they use their intonation that creates and engages an audience. Romeo and Juliet will carry on the test of time for years beyond, and we must embrace it. If you embrace English, if you embrace it and you immerse yourself in the stories, you will learn life skills in society, behaviors, and everything else. Anyway, that's it. So please, I'm sorry about the phone. Somebody was phoning me at that moment. I'm really sorry about that. But anyway, let's get back into really studying this play. Let's get a good grade for it. And as I said, you've got to trust me, because you've got to trust me with Romeo and Juliet, because I was Romeo. Okay, take care.